I'm Michael Peters, sports editor of the Tulsa World, sitting alongside Dave Sittler, columnist with the Tulsa World, and welcome to another edition of Sports Extra on Demand. At least this week, Dave, we get to start with actual football now, with some of the realignment madness that has been, that's a little bit past us somewhat anyway. So, big win this weekend for Oklahoma State in College Station. Of course, I was a little disappointed with the play of the Aggies in the second half, but it was a great effort by...
You went to A&M.
Well, you know, and I do what I can. But it was a great effort, though, that Oklahoma State was able to come back from that big of a deficit. They held their composure, like I said in a blog this weekend. Was impressed with how Mike Gundy conducted himself, especially at halftime. How calm he was. It seemed like some of that maturity may have moved over to his team and how they expanded in the second half. Some people have called that perhaps the biggest win in Oklahoma State football history. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I think we're going to have to wait, Michael. We're going to have to wait and see where Oklahoma State goes the rest of the year. Let's say they go ahead and win the Big 8, or the Big 12 championship. It's down to about 8.
Big 9.
Yeah, Big 9. If they win the Big 12 championship outright and get to a BCS bowl, and if they get to the BCS championship game, then yes, to me, it would be the biggest win in their history. It's definitely the biggest in Mike Gundy's. The win he got at Missouri a couple years ago, about 3 years ago, was tremendous. But as I wrote in the column Sunday, I think that win, and you spoke to it just there a minute ago, the maturity, I think he has grown up so much as a coach, and that has carried over to his team. So the jury's still out on that one, and we'll see later in the year.
Now, I mentioned this in the blog over the weekend, and I do believe this. I don't think that they're going to be an underdog in any game the rest of the year until Bedlam, probably. I don't see that, unless Texas really shows something either this week against Iowa State or next week against Oklahoma in the Red River, that I think they'll be favored against Texas. I think they'll probably be favored against...
you think at Missouri?
I think even maybe at Missouri, against Baylor too, I think they might be favored. My question is now, are they a legitimate national championship contender? Could we get to a point now where Bedlam is for a spot in the BCS title game?
That would be the dream scenario, but I'm not sure what to make of your Aggies. I thought they were great the first half, and then, I've never seen a momentum shift like that. And what we forget is, OSU could have had a couple more touchdowns. They got the run back called back, and then, of course, Justin Blackman does his own thing, trying to dive in the end zone and throws the ball away. If they play the second half, the rest of the season like that, yeah, I think they've got a real chance because now they're number 5, so they're within striking distance. A couple of teams obviously are going to have to lose above them. I've heard some OSU fans say they'd love to meet Boise State in the title game because they'd like to see the, they'll beat OU obviously, and then the Southeastern Conference schools will beat each other, and there's still 2 up there. That would be fun, but it's that's why I say we have to wait till the end. But yeah, I think you got to call them at least a contender.
Yeah, they seem to be a legitimate contender now, and I guess now partnered with Oklahoma, who took a little bit of a slip this week, down to 2 in the polls. What did you make of kind of that move and the performance they had against Missouri? They weren't impressive, but I guess as Coach Stoops said this week, he was kind of defending, no style points. A win is a win. Doesn't matter how it looks as long as you put a W up there. What did you kind of get out of the Missouri game?
Well, first of all, I wasn't surprised they slipped in the poll, the AP poll, and Coach Stoops said he wasn't either. But I'm not sure if people are looking at LSU's schedule and realizing that some of those teams they beat, like Mississippi State, isn't very good. But they've got the time to make it back there. I was surprised that they had a letdown, obviously, defensively at home against Missouri. Now, maybe it's the sign of a great program that you win by 10 and nobody's happy. But Coach Stoops said at his Tuesday press conference, he talked to his team about every great team I've had here made improvement along the way, and this team's hit a wall. So will it go backward or will it make more improvement? That's going to be the key to watch there.
I think it's interesting that they struggled a little bit with Missouri. That defense, I think, could be what keeps them out of the national championship game, because that defense still seems to have some of the same key issues that it's had over the last couple of years, having difficulty with guys getting open in the secondary and having problems with that. Interesting, at lunch we talked about the same thing you talked about the schedule and about LSU. Where do you think Mississippi State would finish in the Big 12? I don't know. I don't think that they would beat A&M. I don't think they'd beat Oklahoma State. Missouri. Maybe not Missouri. Maybe not Baylor. Maybe not Texas. That's a team that might finish 7th in the Big 12. And so now you base it on a 19-6 performance, and I saw that game, and
I did too.
they that wasn't overly impressive, but I mean it's still early, and there's still they still got Alabama to play. They still have it's a tough conference, no doubt, but I think sometimes I know A&M fans, especially when they move into it, I think they overblow a little bit how deep the SEC is. There's no question that the SEC at the top is the cream of the crop, and no doubt that they've had the national championships. But I think, in terms of depth, I don't know that they have the same kind of depth that people give them credit for.
Right. I think that's one of the things that's pretty sadly been overlooked in all this realignment talk with the Big 12 is how good the Big 12 is this year. It is really good, and it goes deep. And unfortunately, it's going to lose a team or two out of that down the road. But I with OU, OSU right there, and who knows what Texas is going to do. But I think that, a lot of people are saying the national championship game is actually going to be played, November 9th when Alabama plays LSU. Well, I've heard that before. And a lot of times the team that wins that game loses the national championship game. And so I'm sure both OU and OSU would like that opportunity. And I agree with you about OU's defense, and I'm sorry, some people don't like this. I'm not sold on Landry Jones in the clutch. Now, even Bob Stoops said after the Florida State game that was not a great pass that Kenny Stills had to catch. All right? So if he can keep proving that he can win on the road in clutch situations like that, they got a shot. But Michael, I almost right now, I'm so impressed with Oklahoma State, I'd almost right now give them a better shot at it than OU.
Now, one coach who probably has a valid vote in that running is Bill Blankenship. He's seen Oklahoma State, and Boise State. They showed a little bit of life, especially in the second half against Boise State, but they've gone now 0-3 against 3 top 5 programs. Finally, that month is over. I guess the question is, did they get something out of that, or has there been too much damage done for them to be able to kind of put things back together and make a serious run at CUSA?
No, I think I know Coach Blankenship is disappointed they didn't win one of those games. Some way they could have come out of that 2-2 with the win at Tulane. But I was so impressed that G.J. Kinney found a way to come back and play at Boise. I think they can build on that. I mean, still, the loss of Damaris Johnson cannot be made big enough. It's a killer for them. But last year at this time they were standing about the same way, and they end up with a great season and a great bowl win. So I think the experience of that, they've got a lot of experience on this team, that they've got a chance. But I'll tell you, Houston is really good. I think SMU will give them trouble, and then the other side of the conference, I don't know. And coming up Saturday, North Texas. Granted, Indiana's a bad Big Ten team, but it's still a Big Ten team. And they got Dan McCartney, who I think is one of the most underrated coaches to ever come through the Big 12, Big 8.
I agree with that, yes.
So he's obviously got it rolling, so it'll be fun. I'm covering that game, and I'm really looking forward to it to see how they do if this is a new season now that September is over.
Now, we can't have one of these shows if we don't talk a little bit about realignment. Now, A&M officially now a member of the SEC. Seems like Missouri talking a little bit perhaps about going in that same direction. What do you see here going forward in the next several weeks? Can they keep Missouri in? Can they expand? What's going on with that?
Well, as of this minute, and it could change by the time we're finished with this show, if I had to bet, I'd bet Missouri leaves. Just simply because the SEC offers them incredible stability, a lot of money. The Big 12 can't offer that. They offer them money. They can't offer them stability. So let's say Missouri goes. Now the latest rumor is the schools that could come in: Louisville, BYU, Boise State, TCU. I'm forgetting somebody in there.
Maybe West Virginia, maybe?
Yeah, West Virginia is the other one, because we still hear, I mean, I agree with Boone Pickens. TCU belongs in the Big 12. The Lost Dogs doesn't want him. That means they're not going to be there. I'm telling you, the Lost Dogs, like I wrote the other day, runs this league and whatever they want. So I think they'd sign off on BYU, Louisville. I mean, I'd love to see West Virginia, but I don't know if that's what do you think, geographically?
Well, although none of this doesn't seem to make sense geographically, but I think if the Big East is going to take a dive, then perhaps that's how you get your teams back, as you go through with a West Virginia, with a Louisville, with a BYU, and try to go. TCU has worked their way into it, definitely, but I could see if I'm Texas Tech or I'm Baylor, I don't want TCU either because I don't want another team to compete with. So I don't know that it's even all Texas in that regard either. I think there is some.
I think even the Oklahoma schools feel that way about TCU. We don't need them in there. But everybody says, well, what else did they bring beside football? If you really paid close attention to this, football has driven this whole thing. Ask Bill Self. Ask any basketball coach with a great program like Bill Self has at Kansas. They're stunned, but football is driving this train. And TCU has got a top-notch football program. And I just think geographically it fits. I don't know if Boone Pickens can call the Lost Dodds bluff, but I'd like to see somebody do it. I hope the league stays together, but there's nobody out there that's going to replace what we lose in A&M, what you lose in Nebraska. Those two. And then Missouri. I mean, Colorado's Colorado. Yeah, some tradition there. But those other three, it's just going to be sad because nobody out there really is a Big 12, what I consider a Big 12 caliber. And it's just, to me, crushing that your Aggies turned around and left us, Michael.
Yeah, well, hopefully they hope for higher ground anyway. Anyway, that's all we have time for this week on Sports Extra On Demand. Please join us next week for another installment.